These are the top 5 things to know when you're pulled over. My name is Daniel Vaswani, and I'm a lead attorney at Virtuoso Criminal DUI Lawyers. Today, I'm going to talk about one very important topic. Specifically, after you've been pulled over for a traffic violation, what you should do and what some of the common mistakes are that actually cause the situation to become more serious. In some instances, when you're pulled over, you have to remain calm. It's often true that you don't have much experience with law enforcement. And although they have pulled you over because they believe that you've committed some sort of offense, it's usually true that if you communicate in a calm and less agitated manner, that likely things will resolve much simpler. When people often get stressed, they often talk more and often say things that are unnecessary as it relates to the conversation. If you remain calm, you will use less words that cause the officers to become less inclined to conduct further investigation. By limiting the amount of information you give to the officers, you often, number 1, diffuse the situation. Number 2, you often keep yourself from incriminating yourself. And that ties in topic number 2. The second thing that you got to be most concerned about is that you should not admit fault. Whether it's on the basis of committing a traffic offense or under suspicion of DUI after committing a traffic offense, the officer will ask you, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" You should not provide a specific reason why you were pulled over. In fact, often the officer can proceed just on the basis that you in fact admitted to committing this specific offense. By telling them what you've done wrong, you also admit to that offense. So if you were to in fact contest that offense in the future, the officer will use your own admission as basis by which to prove the actual offense occurred. It is necessary to use fewer words and do not admit to the actual offense. What you should do is say, "Officer, unfortunately, I don't know." And then that's it. The third most effective and important thing to understand when you are pulled over is your basic rights. First and foremost, you obviously have the right to remain silent. It's very important. Although it's not clear that you're in a specific situation where they have to read you your Miranda rights, you still want to say less, as I keep saying. You also have to know that the officers generally do not have the right to search your vehicle. What that means is that you should not consent to a search of a vehicle. It also means that you'd be very thoughtful about what exists inside your car because certain things can trigger an opportunity to search your car. For example, if they see illegality immediately in front of them, they have the ability then to search your car on that basis. And in some situations, they will often create a reason to search your vehicle. Be very thoughtful that you say that I do not consent to the search of my vehicle. And that also, there is nothing in plain view that allows them to justify subsequently searching your car. By simply knowing these rights, you can protect yourself from much more serious offenses. What usually starts with a traffic infraction can result in something considerably more serious if a search actually occurs and something is recovered. Keep in mind that if a search occurs after a traffic offense, you need qualified counsel to be able to take a look at the search. And you want to make sure that you give us every potential option that we have, every potential defense that we have to preserve your rights, to ensure that in fact your rights were not violated. Now let's talk about the fourth most important thing. You should be very cautious about your specific movements inside the vehicle. Let me explain why. If you make furtive gestures or gestures that otherwise suggest that you're going to engage in further criminal conduct, or in fact that those gestures or physical movements inside your vehicle suggest that you're potentially intoxicated, often those things can make it so that the officer pulls you out of the vehicle. As I said, you want to ensure that the interaction with the officer is limited, that they have the least amount of information from you. You also want to make sure that the officer cannot justify further pulling you out of the vehicle by saying that you were doing something that caused them to believe that you were engaged in some other criminality. What that means is that when you're reaching for your license and registration, that you do it calmly and assertively and cautiously at the same time. And when I say that, the reason why is that you don't want the officer to say that they believe that they were in danger. If they believe that they're in danger at any point, it could be one of those situations that you see on TV, and that's the last thing we want to happen. Finally, the fifth most important thing that you must understand after you've been pulled over is that at that moment, the officer believes that they perceive you committing an offense. Argue with the officer is not going to change whether or not you're responsible for that offense. So what you should do is engage in the same conduct that I've been suggesting throughout this entire conversation. Say as little as possible. Do not feel compelled to argue your case. If the officer asks you about your conduct, don't speak. Choose to not give them any more ammo against you. Remain silent. Be very cautious. Identify yourself, provide your insurance, and provide your registration, and say nothing else. It is the simplest thing that you can do. If you've been in a situation where you were pulled over for an offense, whether it's a traffic violation that resulted in a criminal offense or a criminal charge, you should always contact qualified counsel. By doing so, you preserve your rights, you keep yourself safe, you reduce the amount of money you have to spend, and you potentially keep yourself out of jail. If you have further questions, give us a call at 8336-NO-JAIL.